"You're embarrassing this family, Dad. Your old-fashioned ways are killing our business. It's time for you to step aside and let someone competent take over." Those were my son Mark's exact words, as he had security escort me out of Mercer Valley Resort, the wine resort my late wife Sarah and I built from absolutely nothing 30 years ago. At 65, I watched my own flesh and blood celebrate taking over what he called his vision for the future. But as Mark stood there in that lobby, gloating over his corporate takeover, he had no clue that I already owned not just our family resort, but the entire hospitality empire he was about to discover. What happened next would teach him the true meaning of legacy. Before I show you exactly what happened when Mark discovered the true cost of his betrayal, comment below where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button for more stories about sons who learned too late never to underestimate their fathers. The security guard's hand on my elbow felt like a branding iron. I had hired this man, trained him, promoted him to head of security. Now he couldn't meet my eyes as he guided me toward the exit. The marble floors that Sarah had personally selected echoed with each step, a funeral march for everything we had built together. "This is for your own good, Silas," Mark called after me, using my first name like I was some stranger he was dismissing. "Not Dad, not even Father, just Silas. The board agrees you've lost touch with modern hospitality. Your sentimental attachment to the past is holding us back." The board, 5 people who had been our friends, our dinner guests, godparents to Mark when he was born. Now they sat around the mahogany conference table Sarah had picked out, nodding like puppets while my son orchestrated my humiliation. I could see them through the glass walls, avoiding my gaze, shuffling papers, pretending this corporate coup was somehow noble. Maria Santos, our head of housekeeping for 20 years, stood frozen by the front desk. Tears streamed down her weathered face as she watched the man who had paid for her daughter's college tuition being escorted out like a common criminal. She had been there when Sarah collapsed in the wine cellar, had held my hand during the funeral, had helped me raise Mark when grief nearly consumed me. "Mr. Silas," she whispered, but Mark's sharp look silenced her. "It's just Silas now, Maria," my son corrected coldly. "And going forward, you'll report directly to me. We're implementing new efficiency standards." The automatic doors swooshed open, and California sunshine hit my face like a slap. Behind me, I could hear Mark addressing the staff, his voice filled with the arrogance that his Stanford MBA had somehow validated. He spoke of modernization, profit margins, guest experience optimization, corporate buzzwords that meant nothing to the families who had been coming here for decades, who knew Sarah's favorite flowers still bloomed in the garden she had planted. I stood on the circular driveway where Sarah and I had welcomed our first guests in 1993. The fountain she had designed still bubbled cheerfully, oblivious to the betrayal happening inside. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone to call a taxi. At 65, I was homeless, jobless, and apparently powerless against my own son's ambition. But Mark had made one crucial mistake. In his rush to push me out, he had never bothered to learn what his old-fashioned father had been doing during those long nights in his home office. While he was busy networking with his MBA friends and dismissing my outdated ideas, I had been building something he couldn't even imagine. The taxi pulled up, and I took one last look at the resort that had been my life's work. The sign still read Mercer Valley Resort ES, a family legacy since 1993. Soon, Mark would change that too, probably to something sleek and corporate that erased any trace of the love Sarah and I had poured into every stone, every vine, every carefully chosen detail. As we drove away, I smiled for the first time in months. My son thought he had won. He thought he had finally freed himself from his embarrassing, old-fashioned father who clung to sentiment and tradition. He had no idea that the kingdom he believed he had conquered was about to become just one small piece of an empire he never saw coming. The taxi ride gave me time to remember how it all began. 30 years ago, Sarah and I stood on this same piece of land with nothing but a dream and our life savings of $12,000. She was 28, I was 35, and we were both crazy enough to believe we could turn a failing vineyard into something magical. "Silas, look at those hills," Sarah had said, pointing toward the rolling Napa Valley landscape. "Can you see it? Couples celebrating anniversaries, families making memories, people falling in love with wine country the way we have." Her green eyes sparkled with the vision that would become Mercer Valley Resort. We lived in a trailer on the property for 2 years while we renovated the old farmhouse room by room. Sarah designed every detail herself, the hand-painted tiles in the bathrooms, the stone fireplace in the lobby, the herb garden that would supply our restaurant. She had this incredible gift for making strangers feel like family. Our first guest was Mrs. Eleanor Chen, a widow from San Francisco who booked our single available room for her birthday weekend. Sarah spent hours with her, sharing stories about the local wineries, arranging a private tasting, even baking her a birthday cake. Mrs. Chen returned every year after that, bringing friends, then her children, then her grandchildren. This is what hospitality means, Sarah would tell me as we watched families gather around our dinner table. It's not about thread counts or amenities. It's about creating a place where people feel they belong. By our 10th anniversary, we had expanded to 25 rooms. By our 15th, we were booked solid 6 months in advance. Sarah's personal touch made the difference. She remembered every guest's name, their anniversary dates, their favorite wines. She created traditions that made Mercer Valley Resort feel like home. Mark was born in our 12th year of operation. Sarah insisted on keeping him close to the business, letting him help fold linens as a toddler, greet guests as a child. This is his heritage, she would say. Someday he'll understand what we've built here. But someday never came for Sarah. It was a Tuesday morning in March 2015. Sarah was in the wine cellar, selecting bottles for that evening's tasting. I found her collapsed between the Cabernet and Chardonnay, her hand clutched to her chest. The paramedics said her heart had simply stopped, no warning, no previous symptoms. At 53, my beautiful wife was gone. Mark flew home from Stanford for the funeral. He was 22 then, studying business administration, full of ideas about corporate efficiency and market optimization. During the reception, while I was still numb with grief, he pulled me aside. "Dad, I've been thinking about the resort's future," he said, his voice gentle but determined. "When I graduate, I want to help modernize things. Sarah's way was beautiful, but we need systems, technology, professional management." I should have heard the warning in those words. Should have recognized that my son saw his mother's legacy as something to be improved rather than honored. But I was drowning in sorrow, grateful that he wanted to be involved at all. 3 years later, Mark returned with his MBA and a head full of theories about hospitality management. The gentle boy who had once helped Sarah plant roses had become a corporate strategist who saw sentiment as weakness. I just never imagined he would see me the same way. Mark's transformation began the moment he stepped back into Mercer Valley Resort with his MBA diploma. Gone was the boy who had once helped his mother arrange flowers. In his place stood a 25-year-old corporate strategist who saw our family business as a case study waiting to be solved. "Dad, we need to discuss efficiency metrics," he announced during his first week back. He had converted Sarah's reading nook into an office, complete with spreadsheets and productivity charts. "Our cost per occupied room is 30% higher than industry standards." I tried explaining that our higher costs came from personal touches, handwritten welcome notes, complimentary wine tastings, Maria remembering every guest's dietary needs. Mark just shook his head. "Sentiment doesn't appear on profit statements," he said, pulling up a PowerPoint presentation. "We're leaving money on the table with outdated practices." Within months, Mark had convinced me to let him optimize operations. He replaced Sarah's curated wine selection with bulk distributor purchases. He eliminated evening receptions where guests mingled with local winemakers. He installed digital check-in systems that removed Sarah's insisted upon personal greetings. Our longtime guests noticed immediately. The Hendersons, who had celebrated 15 anniversaries with us, wrote that the resort felt cold and corporate. The Martinez family, summer reunion regulars since our second year, booked elsewhere for the first time ever. "These are growing pains," Mark assured me when I showed him declining satisfaction scores. "We're transitioning from mom and pop to professional hospitality." That's when he brought in Brad Wilson, his Stanford classmate who consulted for major hotel chains. Brad was everything Mark aspired to be: slick, confident, completely dismissive of small-town hospitality thinking. "Silas, you've done amazing work," Brad told me during our first meeting, his tone patronizing. "But Mark has vision. He understands industry direction. Maybe it's time to let the next generation lead." I watched my son nod along, expression serious and self-important. At 26, he truly believed he knew better than someone with 30 years of experience. The final blow came when Mark convinced our board, longtime family friends who had invested small amounts over the years, that I was resistant to necessary changes. He presented charts showing declining revenues, conveniently omitting that decline coincided with his efficiency improvements. "We need decisive leadership," Mark told them during what I thought was a routine quarterly meeting. "My father's emotional attachment to outdated practices prevents us from reaching potential." Frank Morrison, Sarah's godfather, shifted uncomfortably. "Mark, your father built this from nothing. Maybe we should." "Respect the past while embracing the future," Mark interrupted smoothly. That's exactly what I'm proposing. But we need clear authority for necessary changes. The vote was 4-1 in Mark's favor. Frank was the only dissenter. As I sat watching these people friends who had attended Sarah's funeral, celebrated Mark's graduation strip away my authority, something died inside me. Not just pride, but faith and family loyalty. This is temporary, Silas, board member Patricia Wells assured me afterward, just until Mark establishes himself. But I could see it in Mark's eyes as he shook hands with each member. This wasn't temporary. This was a coup, executed with corporate precision and justified with spreadsheets and buzzwords. That night, alone in my home office, I made a decision that would change everything. If my son wanted corporate games, I would show him what a real businessman could accomplish. The boy who had once planted roses with his mother was gone. In his place stood someone who saw his father as an obstacle to be removed. The studio apartment I rented in downtown Napa was 800 square feet of determination. At 62, I was starting over with nothing but my savings and a burning need to prove my son wrong. Every morning, I walked to the corner coffee shop and opened my laptop, a skill I learned from YouTube videos. For 30 years, I had relied on personal relationships and word of mouth. Now I needed to master social media, online reviews, digital advertising, and search engine optimization. My fingers, more accustomed to pruning vines than typing, slowly adapted to the keyboard as I struggled through online courses on hospitality management and digital marketing. "You're never too old to learn," became my daily mantra. 3 months into exile, I met Tom Chen at a San Francisco wine industry event. He was 45, a former tech executive who had sold his startup and was investing in hospitality. Unlike the young sharks Mark surrounded himself with, Tom had wisdom to match his success. "I heard about Mercer Valley," he said over dinner at a Mission District bistro. "Word travels fast. Your son's changes haven't been well received by old guard winemakers." Tom became my mentor in this new world. He taught me customer relationship management, online booking platforms, and data analytics. More importantly, he believed in hospitality that honored tradition while embracing useful technology. "The industry needs operators like you, Silas," he said during our weekly meetings. "People who understand hospitality is about human connection, not just profit margins." Elena Martinez, our former wine consultant who had quietly distanced herself from Mercer Valley after Mark's takeover, became my second ally. She had connections throughout California wine country and knew which properties were struggling or available. "There's a small resort in Sonoma County," she mentioned during a November phone call. "The owners are retiring. They want someone who will preserve their family legacy rather than gut it for corporate efficiency." I drove to Sonoma the next morning. The property was perfect: 20 rooms, established vineyard, loyal clientele, but outdated marketing and reservation systems. Everything Mark would dismiss as inefficient, but everything I knew could be improved without destroying its soul. Using a limited liability company Tom helped me establish, I made an offer 30% above asking price with one condition: all existing staff retained. The owners, relieved to find someone who appreciated their work, accepted immediately. 6 months after my humiliation, I owned my first property as an anonymous investor. I kept involvement completely secret, hiring a management company for day-to-day operations while working behind the scenes on improvements. The transformation took 4 months. We upgraded technology infrastructure, improved the website, implemented Elena's wine program suggestions, and trained staff on customer service excellence. Occupancy jumped from 60% to 85% within the first quarter. Industry publications noticed the mysterious turnaround at what was now called Sonoma Heritage Resort. Travel bloggers praised the authentic wine country experience that felt both timeless and contemporary. Meanwhile, Mark was struggling. Mercer Valley's occupancy had dropped to 55%, with online reviews consistently complaining about impersonal service and corporate atmosphere. As I sat in my modest apartment reading positive reviews of my first acquisition, I smiled. My son thought he had defeated his old-fashioned father. He had no idea I was just getting started. Success breeds opportunity, and opportunity was flooding in from every corner of California wine country. Word of Sonoma Heritage Resort's transformation had spread quietly through industry circles, creating buzz about the mysterious investor who turned struggling properties into profitable gems. Within 18 months, I had acquired 4 more properties. Each purchase followed the same pattern: underperforming family-owned resorts with good bones but outdated systems. I bought them through different limited liability companies, always anonymously, always retaining existing staff. Paso Robles Valley Inn was a charming 25-room property whose elderly owners were overwhelmed by online marketing. I transformed their rustic appeal into a destination for authentic Central Coast wine experiences. Occupancy soared from 45% to 90% within 6 months. In Santa Barbara County, I acquired Vineyard Vista Resort, hemorrhaging money due to poor management. Lisa Park, a talented professional I recruited from a luxury chain, became my first trusted general manager. She implemented Sarah's personal service philosophy while utilizing technology systems Tom had taught me to appreciate. Whoever this investor is understands hospitality, Lisa told a trade reporter, unknowingly speaking about her anonymous boss. They preserve what makes each property special while giving us tools to succeed. By my 3rd year in exile, I had quietly assembled what insiders called the most successful boutique hotel group in California wine country. Travel magazines featured my properties without mentioning my name. Wine Spectator praised the authentic experiences that felt both traditional and contemporary. Robert Hayes, a retired hotel executive, approached me through Tom with financing offers for expansion. He had spent 40 years building chains and recognized something special in my approach. "I've been watching these acquisitions," he said during a private San Francisco dinner. "Whoever's behind this understands hospitality as both art and science. I'd like to be part of what comes next." With Robert's backing, I formalized the structure as Mercer Hospitality Group, remaining the anonymous principal owner. We established headquarters in a modest Santa Rosa office building, far from spotlight but perfectly positioned to oversee Northern California operations. The irony wasn't lost on me naming my company Mercer Hospitality Group, while my son systematically destroyed that same family name at our original resort. While I built an empire honoring Sarah's vision of authentic hospitality, Mark drove Mercer Valley Resort into the ground with corporate efficiency obsession. Industry reports showed Mercer Valley's occupancy had dropped to 48%. Guest reviews consistently complained about cold, impersonal atmosphere. Several longtime employees had quit, including department heads who had worked since our early years. Maria Santos, our loyal head of housekeeping, finally reached her breaking point when Mark implemented productivity standards that eliminated personal touches she had maintained since Sarah's time. She resigned after 22 years of service. Meanwhile, Mercer Hospitality Group was featured in Hospitality Today as the boutique collection redefining wine country luxury. The article praised our mysterious leadership that preserved authentic character while achieving industry-leading profitability. David Rossi, one of Napa Valley's most respected winemakers, became an unofficial spokesperson for our approach. "These resorts understand what wine country hospitality should be," he told Wine Business Monthly. "They honor tradition while embracing innovation. Exactly what this industry needs." As I sat in my Santa Rosa office reviewing quarterly reports showing Mercer Hospitality Group's continued growth, I allowed myself satisfaction. My son had dismissed me as an outdated relic, but I had built something he couldn't comprehend. The wine industry was buzzing about the mysterious empire that had emerged from nowhere. Soon, very soon, Mark would discover exactly who had been building the kingdom he never saw coming. The call came at 2 a.m. Mark's voice, usually so confident and corporate smooth, cracked with desperation as he spoke to someone he thought was a potential investor. I knew because Elena Martinez had positioned herself strategically within the wine country network, and word of Mercer Valley Resort's financial crisis had reached every corner of the industry. My son, who had once dismissed sentiment and tradition, was now begging strangers to save the business he had systematically destroyed. The numbers were devastating. Occupancy had plummeted to 38%, the lowest in Mercer Valley's 30-year history. Online reviews painted a picture of corporate coldness that drove away the very guests who had once considered our resort their second home. "Staff seemed robotic and disinterested," read one recent TripAdvisor review. "This place used to feel like visiting family. Now it's just another overpriced hotel with zero personality." Brad Wilson, Mark's Stanford friend and supposed business guru, had quietly distanced himself from the sinking ship. His consulting contract had mysteriously expired without renewal, leaving Mark to face the crisis alone. The bank was circling like vultures. Mercer Valley Resort carried significant debt from Mark's ill-conceived renovations, a sterile lobby redesign that eliminated Sarah's warm touches, a restaurant concept that ignored local wine culture, and a spa addition that attracted no one because it felt like a corporate wellness center rather than a wine country retreat. Mark had laid off 12 employees in the past 6 months, including longtime staff who had been with us since the early days. The remaining workers moved through their duties with the defeated air of people who knew they were next. Frank Morrison, the one board member who had voted against Mark's takeover, finally called an emergency meeting. At 74, Frank had seen enough businesses fail to recognize the warning signs. "We're hemorrhaging money," he told the assembled board members, his voice heavy with regret. "Revenue is down 60% from 3 years ago. We're 3 months behind on loan payments. The bank is threatening foreclosure." Patricia Wells, who had enthusiastically supported Mark's corporate vision, now shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Perhaps we acted too hastily," she murmured. "Silas did build something sustainable here, but admitting their mistake wouldn't solve the immediate crisis. Mercer Valley Resort needed either a massive cash infusion or a buyer willing to take on its crushing debt load." That's when the anonymous offer arrived. The proposal came through a respected Napa Valley real estate attorney, with no apparent connection to any known hospitality group. The buyer was offering to purchase Mercer Valley Resort for exactly what was owed to the bank, plus enough additional cash to cover outstanding operational debts. More importantly, the offer included a management contract for Mark if he wanted it, and guaranteed employment for all remaining staff for at least 1 year. It was a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. Mark's pride wrestled with his desperation during 3 sleepless nights. He could accept the offer and save what remained of Mercer Valley Resort, admitting his failure in the process. Or he could refuse and watch 30 years of family legacy disappear into bankruptcy court. The decision was made for him when the bank delivered an ultimatum: accept the anonymous buyer's offer or face immediate foreclosure proceedings. On a gray Tuesday morning in October, Mark signed the papers that transferred ownership of Mercer Valley Resort to a holding company he had never heard of. As he walked through the lobby one last time as owner, past the cold corporate fixtures he had installed, he couldn't have imagined that his father was already planning the restoration that would begin the very next day. The boy who had once helped his mother plant roses had sold the garden he never learned to tend. The morning after Mark signed away Mercer Valley Resort, I stood in the lobby that had once been filled with Sarah's warmth. The sterile corporate fixtures my son had installed looked even more out of place in the early dawn light filtering through windows Sarah had specifically chosen for their eastern exposure. Tom Chen and Elena Martinez flanked me as we surveyed 3 years of corporate damage. Sarah's hand-painted tiles were covered by generic marble. Her carefully curated local artwork had been replaced by mass-produced prints that could have hung in any chain hotel anywhere. "It's going to take months to undo this," Elena said softly, running her fingers along the cold marble reception desk that had replaced Sarah's warm mahogany original. "Then we'd better get started," I replied, pulling out renovation plans I had been secretly developing for the past year. I had known this day would come. Through Elena's network and Robert Hayes' connections, I had monitored Mercer Valley's decline month by month. When the financial crisis reached its inevitable conclusion, I was ready with an offer that would save the property while reclaiming my family's legacy. Renovation began immediately. I brought in craftsmen who had worked on my other Mercer Hospitality Group properties, along with artisans who remembered Sarah's original vision. Every corporate improvement Mark had implemented would be carefully removed and replaced with elements honoring our resort's authentic character. First priority was rehiring staff. Maria Santos wept when I called personally to offer her old position back, along with a significant raise and formal apology for how she had been treated. "Mr. Silas?" she whispered into the phone, hardly believing it was me. "But how?" "The new owners," they said. "The new owners understand the value of loyalty and experience," I told her. "Mercer Valley Resort needs people who remember what hospitality truly means." Within 2 weeks, I had rehired 14 former employees, each sworn to secrecy about my involvement, until the official reopening. Construction crews worked with unusual efficiency, motivated by bonuses for completing restoration ahead of schedule. Sarah's herb garden was replanted exactly as she had designed it, using photographs Elena had preserved from the resort's golden years. The original mahogany reception desk was retrieved from storage and lovingly restored. Local artisans recreated hand-painted tiles, working from detailed photographs and Sarah's original sketches. Word of the mysterious renovation spread quickly through Napa Valley. Industry insiders speculated about which major hospitality group had acquired the struggling resort. Some guessed an international chain seeking wine country foothold. Others suspected a celebrity investor seeking privacy and authenticity. David Rossi, the respected winemaker who had advocated for my other properties, stopped by during construction. He didn't recognize me in work clothes and hard hat, but approved of what he saw. "Whoever's behind this understands wine country," he told the project manager. "They're bringing back the soul this place used to have." As renovation neared completion, I faced the decision I had been anticipating for months. The grand reopening would be my moment of revelation, culmination of 3 years of careful planning and empire building. I personally designed the invitation list for the reopening celebration. Every major figure in California's wine and hospitality industries would be there. Food and wine journalists from San Francisco and Los Angeles, mayors of Napa and surrounding communities. And, of course, my son Mark, who would receive his invitation as a former owner and valued member of the wine country community. The invitations went out on elegant paper matching Sarah's original stationery, featuring a photograph of the restored resort showcasing every carefully recreated detail. The event was scheduled for a Saturday evening in late spring, when the vineyard would be in full bloom. Mark would come, I was certain. Curiosity and wounded pride would compel him to see what the anonymous new owners had done with his former property. He had no idea he was about to face the past he had tried so hard to escape. The Saturday evening of Mercer Valley Resort's grand reopening was perfect, exactly the kind of California wine country evening Sarah would have chosen. Golden sunlight filtered through vineyard rows as guests arrived for what the industry called the most anticipated hospitality event of the year. I watched from my office window as luxury cars filled the driveway. David Rossi arrived, nodding approvingly at the restored fountain Sarah had designed. Mayor Patricia Collins admired the herb garden that bloomed exactly as it had in our golden years. Journalists from San Francisco Chronicle and Wine Spectator mingled with hospitality executives, all speculating about the mysterious investor who had transformed Mercer Valley from corporate sterility back to authentic charm. Then I saw him. Mark emerged from a black BMW, expression carefully neutral but eyes scanning every detail of the property he had lost. He wore his best suit but carried the weight of failure and curiosity on his shoulders. Elena Martinez approached him professionally, introducing him as the resort's former owner. I watched him force polite conversations, discomfort evident, as people praised restoration work that had erased his corporate improvements. At 7:30, as California's sunset painted the hills gold and crimson, I made my way to the temporary stage in the main dining room. The crowd of 200 industry leaders quieted as I approached the microphone. "Good evening, and thank you for joining us to celebrate Mercer Valley Resort's rebirth," I began, voice steady despite this moment's magnitude. "This property holds a special place in wine country history, and an even more special place in my heart." Mark stood near the back, expression shifting from polite attention to confusion. He was trying to place my voice, my face, wondering why the mysterious owner looked familiar. 30 years ago, my late wife Sarah and I purchased this land with nothing but a dream and $12,000. We built Mercer Valley Resort from the ground up, creating what we hoped would become a place where families make memories and couples fall in love with wine country. Electric murmur ran through the crowd. Mark's face went completely white. "My name is Silas Mercer," I continued, letting the words hang in the air like perfectly aged wine. 3 years ago, I was escorted from this very room by security, dismissed by my own son as too old-fashioned to understand modern hospitality. Absolute silence. Every eye fixed on me, then shifting to Mark, who stood frozen like a deer in headlights. During my exile, I learned new skills, met remarkable people, and built something I never imagined. Mercer Hospitality Group now operates 12 boutique resorts throughout California wine country, each honoring the traditions Sarah and I believed in while embracing technology that enhances rather than replaces authentic hospitality. David Rossi began smiling, understanding dawning. Mayor Collins covered her mouth in amazement. Journalists reached for phones and notebooks. Tonight, as we celebrate Mercer Valley Resort's restoration to its original vision, I welcome you to the flagship property of Mercer Hospitality Group. Welcome to the resort my wife and I built with love, lost to corporate efficiency, and reclaimed through determination. I looked directly at Mark, my son, who had dismissed me as irrelevant, who had tried erasing Sarah's legacy, who never imagined his old-fashioned father could build an empire. The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it. All I could see was Mark's face, shock, recognition, and the dawning realization that his father had not just survived his betrayal, but had used it to build something magnificent. "Welcome," I said, my voice carrying across the silent room, "to my kingdom." An hour after the last guest departed, I found Mark sitting alone in Sarah's restored herb garden, staring at roses she had planted decades ago, the same roses he had once helped her tend as a boy. "I never imagined you could build something so substantial," he said quietly. "I thought I was saving the business from your outdated methods." I sat on the stone bench Sarah had commissioned, the one Mark had removed during his renovation. "You weren't entirely wrong. I did need to learn new skills. But you threw away everything valuable while chasing efficiency. Mark finally met my eyes, and I saw the boy I had raised buried beneath years of corporate conditioning. I destroyed what you and Mom built. I fired people who loved this place. Yes, you did, I said simply. Can you ever forgive me? He asked, voice breaking. I thought of Sarah, who believed in second chances, and of Maria Santos crying as security escorted me out. Forgiveness isn't free, son, I said finally. It's earned through humility, hard work, and proving you understand what family legacy truly means. Mark straightened, hope flickering. What would I have to do? Start at the bottom. Housekeeping, front desk, kitchen prep, whatever Maria Santos thinks you need to learn. No management authority for 2 years. Work alongside people you once dismissed. Earn their respect through actions, not words. I paused. You'll also write personal apologies to every staff member you mistreated, and spend time understanding what made this place special before you tried to change it. Mark nodded slowly. And after 2 years, if you prove you've learned what hospitality really means, if you can honor Sarah's vision while contributing genuine improvements, then maybe you'll earn a place in Mercer Hospitality Group. But you'll never again have power to destroy what others built with love. We sat in comfortable silence under California stars. Finally, Mark spoke. I thought success meant eliminating sentiment, maximizing efficiency. Real success, I said, means building something that outlasts you, something that makes people's lives better. Your mother understood that. It took me losing everything to remember it myself. As I walked back toward the resort, I reflected on this journey. Sometimes the people who should believe in you most are least capable of doing so, not because of your limitations, but because of their own. Sometimes you have to build your own kingdom to prove you deserve respect. If you've ever been underestimated by people closest to you, remember this. Their closed doors don't determine your destination. You can build something magnificent from the ashes of their doubt. The true measure of a man isn't how he wins, but how he forgives and how he teaches others to earn that forgiveness. Have you ever had someone dismiss your potential, only to exceed their expectations? Share your story in the comments below, and subscribe for more tales of resilience and the power of never giving up on yourself. The story of Silas Mercer proves that betrayal stories can transform into comeback stories when we refuse to let rejection define us. God often uses our darkest moments to prepare us for our greatest victories, teaching us that true strength comes from endurance rather than immediate success. These betrayal stories become the foundation stones of empires we never thought possible. Like the most memorable grandpa stories, Silas's journey shows us that age is never a barrier to reinvention when determination meets divine purpose. God doesn't waste our pain, He transforms it into wisdom that can guide not only our own lives, but the lives of those who betrayed us. The best grandpa stories remind us that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the ultimate display of power. When we choose to offer redemption instead of revenge, we mirror God's grace in our own relationships. Silas could have destroyed Mark completely, but instead, he chose to rebuild him. True legacy isn't about the empire you build, but about the hearts you restore along the way. Have you experienced betrayal stories that later became your testimony of triumph? Share your own grandpa stories of wisdom and resilience in the comments, and subscribe to discover more tales of extraordinary comebacks.